coming up next.
Although I was trained by the Dave Ramsey folks, I'm not a die-hard Dave Ramsey person because I believe that every human being, every family, every budget, every spending plan, whatever, is unique. And it doesn't always fit in Dave Ramsey's box. We'll say that. I think it's great curriculum. That also being said. And so we got on the same page, literally. That's why when you take the class, you're looking at the same workbook, watching the same videos, and we got on the same page. And I'm the money nerd. He always puts them in categories: money nerd, money free spirits. And I all of a sudden found a way to channel my anxiety of my finances into, hey, we know where it's going now. We have a plan. We actually can get somewhere. And honestly, through that, we never fought about finances because we had a vocabulary. We now had a communication style, and we had something to actually point at and look at and talk about versus at each other. And I had a friend probably 5 years later say, well, what do you fight about then? That's the only thing we fight about. And I would say, don't worry, you'll find something else.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You are here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength because He's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction: your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation, and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Joya, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing His truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter, a woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome. I'm Tanya Joya with Faith Over Addiction. And one of the things that often happens in a relationship where there is addiction, some type of mental illness, something like that, is finances can become really problematic. So here we are in the beginning of the year. We are just about in the middle of January. And this is a time where everybody starts their exercise program, starts their diet program, saying they're going to get their prayer life, their meditation in place. So we wanted to bring you some Christian faith-based understanding of setting a budget, dealing with your finances. So I have Coach Tara with me. She is a certified Dave Ramsey financial coach. And Coach Tara, tell us a little bit about your journey into finances. I mean, how did you get yourself in this?
I love that because I feel like it's been forever. But we took an FPU class back when in 2008. I was pregnant with our second child. I wanted to stay home, but finances were not working. And I just knew that whatever we're doing isn't working. Like this month we have extra, the next month I'm scrounging, trying to figure out how to pay bills. And so I said, whatever, I just found a class, we took the class, and I could honestly say after that class, we never fought about finances. And somebody
Never
asked me,
thought
no,
about finances.
we
So
never fought about finances.
explain FPU for those who might not know.
Yes, sorry about that. It's Financial Peace University, and it's the curriculum that Dave Ramsey put together. And although I was trained by the Dave Ramsey folks, I'm not a diehard Dave Ramsey person because I believe that every human being, every family, every budget, every spending plan, whatever, is unique. And it doesn't always fit in Dave Ramsey's box. We'll say that. I think it's great curriculum. That also being said. And so we got on the same page, literally. That's why when you take the class, you're looking at the same workbook, watching the same videos, and we got on the same page. And I'm the money nerd. He always puts them in categories: money nerd, money free spirits. And I all of a sudden found a way to channel my anxiety of my finances into, hey, we know where it's going now. We have a plan. We actually can get somewhere. And honestly, through that, we never fought about finances because we had a vocabulary. We now had a communication style, and we had something to actually point at and look at and talk about versus at each other. And I had a friend probably 5 years later say, well, what do you fight about then? That's the only thing we fight about. And I would say, don't worry, you'll find something else.
And I'm reading a book right now that talks about in true biblical context, arguing, fighting, harsh words, all those types of things should dissipate as we mature in Christians. And we've got this overwhelming cultural things that no, married couples fight, everybody fights, it's okay to fight, all those types of things. And maybe that's not even true. But let's back up a step. Dave Ramsey is a system that my husband and I have used too, and we were not so lucky. We took it twice and then had to hire a coach, a Dave Ramsey coach, before we actually sat down and got it done. But it did, I will say this, it did give us a vocabulary. And there may be people in the audience who have tried Dave and said, that's too hard, I can't do it. One of the things I hear you saying, Tara, is he does have some hard and fast that can be a turnoff. So how would you begin to talk about those?
I've actually had quite a few clients who they'll come to an FPU class. So I'll facilitate online FPU classes. And I have people who will come back and say, well, we did it 10 years ago and it just didn't work for us. Or we tried it and then we got off. We want to try it again. Or we want to try it for real this time. I hear that too. Like, we want to get serious about it this time. We just tried it before. We want to do it for real. And a lot of times I think it's because they're trying to fit their lifestyle into the curriculum versus taking the truths and applying it to their lifestyle or applying it to what they want. And that's, a lot of people don't know what they want. And so they go into the Dave Ramsey class going, oh, this is what he says I should want. And so they're taking what Dave says they should want and forcing their desires and whatever down. And so I will kind of go to the very beginning and say, okay, you know the basics of Dave Ramsey. That's great. Let's go to the beginning. What do you really want? And let's get you on the same page. First of all, that's going to be one of it. One of the things is somebody took FPU and it worked for them and the other person it didn't. And so now you've got two people going, but it works. And the other person says, but it doesn't. And so
well, then you have something to fight about, right?
Exactly.
Fight about.
Yeah.
Let's back up one step here. So Dave bases his philosophy on biblical truths. One of his main philosophies is you should not be in debt. That should be eliminated. He will make one caveat for house debt. He sees that as acceptable debt. And truly, I mean, we used it. We have done well with it. The biblical truths are there, but sometimes there can be some harshness around it that is such a turnoff, some arrogance actually around it that's such a turnoff. So what would you say to each individual person about thinking about their money so they could begin to think about what is it they really want? It's called Financial Peace University, but what does that mean to the people you've worked with?
I look at mindset. That's one of the big things I work on when I work with people. And so if debt is a 4-letter word, why? What, like, why does that create so much anxiety? Or why is that a negative term for you? And we go back, well, my parents had all this kind of debt. Okay, how did that impact you? Or my spouse brought in debt. I didn't have debt, and my spouse brought in debt, and now we're in debt. And so we try to figure out kind of how do you identify, how do you define terms? And what does that conjugate for you? What does that bring up for you? Because for somebody to say, well, I want to be debt free, that someone else might hear that as meaning I get nothing and it's a minimal lifestyle and I will never have fun.
And we're going to eat beans and
Exactly.
we're never going to go out to dinner. We're never going to go on vacation. And you bring up an interesting point that when we come together in marriage, and even when we leave the nest, we're taking with us it's almost like taking your parents' understanding of God instead of developing your own.
Yeah.
So when you're working with them with mindset and you've got these two nations coming together, right? Here's France and here's Italy, and they're not quite speaking the same language. How do you help them figure out what it is they want?
It looks different with every couple, honestly, because of what they're coming to the table with. And we'll try to identify what they have and what is good. I had one couple that they had very differing views on everything, but they had a 7-year-old son that was their everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can't agree on everything else, but you can agree on him. And so we use him as a lot of, but not in a bad way, but like we use coming back to the son as their way to, this is what common ground we have. Let's branch out from here. And so we tried to at least establish that you do have some common ground, right? We're not always at odds. Sometimes it's necessary to go ahead and say, okay, for a little while, we're just going to divide and you can have your camp and you can have your camp and let's see what does overlap. And let's work with the things that overlap versus trying to fix each other, quote unquote, fix each other to match the other person. Let's find what we have common ground on. Let's move forward from there.
So what do you think each person, as we're starting out this next year, maybe you can or can't work with your spouse, or maybe you need to find an accountability. What does each person need to start taking stock of this January? What do they need to look at?
Where's the money going? That's a big one. People don't want to know. But the same thing, when you go to a doctor to say what's wrong, do you want them to not tell you? Right? Because you can't fix it if you don't know what's wrong. Like you get blood work and you don't want to know what it is. Okay, well, how can we treat you if we don't know what it is? So just an honest look at where's the money going. I think, and let me step back a minute too. And Dave talks about this in Financial Peace University, that money is amoral. Money is like a brick. You can build a hospital or you can throw it through a window, right? It's just a dollar is a dollar. It will do whatever you want it to do. And so going, okay, where are my dollars going? I need to know where they're going. Because if you don't know where they're going, you can't tell them that you do or don't agree with where they're going. Right. So that would be one of the first ones is where's my money even going? And a lot of people will think, ooh.
Yes, I just panic over that. I'm like, what's an easy way do you have an easy way to do that? What do you suggest? Do they need to get their, I have one right here, get their little notebook out and write down every penny? What does that look like?
I think it depends on how they spend their money. When I look with clients, we look at, okay, how do you currently spend money? Is it all debit card? Is it on a credit card? Is it checkbooks? Is it cash? Do you just get cash out and it just piddles away? Just identifying how do you spend your money? Where does it go? And with no judgment. I think that's the biggest thing. I sat down with a single mom, probably, let's see, we're in 2025 now. So it was before 2020. So 8 years now, maybe. And we sat down and we looked at her expenses for the month. She was a single mom of 4 kids. She was trying to work, trying to homeschool her kids. She had 2 teenagers, right? She had some expenses to feed 4 teenagers. And she was so like, oh my gosh, I've spent this much money on dining out. And I was like, okay, you fed your kids, right? Well, yeah, but look how much money I spent. Okay, but you had the money, right? Well, yeah, but look how much money I spent. I was like, I don't care. You fed your kids. We're just looking, no judgment. We just need to know what are the numbers? Just tell me what the numbers are. Then we can look at them later and figure out what needs to be addressed. Maybe we don't even need to address your dining out budget. We won't know until we know what the number is. Let's not judge it. There's no judgment in there. And I remember her leaving that discussion saying, I never saw my money without judgment. And I actually can leave this conversation now not judging my dining out budget because I fed my kids and I had money for that. And we're like, okay, next category, right? Like I don't care what you spend on it. We just need to know so we know what box to put it in. That's all we're doing.
Right. Right. So it's kind of like you can think of it like colors in a crayon box, in the sense that there's no color that's better than others. You may like some colors better than others, but there's no reason to judge them. They just all go back in the box. And
Yeah.
once you can see them all, then you can pick which one you want to use, or which one needs to repair, or whatever needs to happen in there. And when we talk about it biblically, it's not that money is evil, it's the love of money that is evil. But we're also asked to be good stewards, and we can't be good stewards putting a blindfold on our eyes and just pretending it's not happening, because it is happening.
Yeah.
We're just ignoring it. So they need to know how they're spending their money, and then they need to account for where they're spending their money. No judgment involved in that. So
Yeah.
how long do you need to keep a strict record of how you're spending your money?
I'd say minimum of a month. Give yourself some time because there's monthly fees, there's monthly expenses. There are 101 different spreadsheets out there, different trackers out there that have categories. I provide a number of my clients different styles based on what they'll actually use. And that'll have, what about this? What about this? When do you pay for this item? And they're like, oh, I forgot about that item. Your yearly things will catch up on people a lot. Like, oh gosh, I forgot that happens in August. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, so the first one is monthly, just basic. What are you spending out every single month? And then after that, we look at, okay, over the course of a year or quarterly or biannual or semi-annually, what are the expenses that you have? Some people will have a tuition for kids or summer camp. Oh yeah, summer camp costs, or registration for cars, or your Costco membership, or things that are like, oh yeah, I guess we do have that. And so we put those into a bucket as well. And so just because that's going to be money going out, but it's not a monthly amount. And so we look at just kind of expenses. We need to know income. How much are you making? You'd be surprised how many clients I have that they don't know how much they're making until I ask them.
Yes. Yes. And,
They don't
and for
know.
those of you who are freelancers, or who have the side hustle, or who have all those things, there is a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Who are not a steady income. I haven't been a steady income for 20
Yeah.
years now.
Yeah.
So in a sense, you kind of throw up your hands and go, well, I don't know. It could be different. If I need more, I'll just go out and find some more somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. But that's not, you can't really run a business that way. You can't really run, family is a business, right? You can't really run a family that way
Right.
either.
You need to keep the lights on. That's fine that your income goes up and down, but you need to know how much it costs to feed your family, keep gas in the car, insurance, keep the lights on, these basic things, which means you must at least make that much. If you can't confirm that you can at least make that much, okay, let's talk, right? We need to talk about, what does your side hustle look like, and what is the constant? And I have all ways of working on the irregular income side of how we balance things out. It's an ebb and flow. Okay, let's learn to surf, right? There's waves. Let's learn to
Right.
surf them, but you
Right.
have to acknowledge, what are your expenses, what is your income, and then we marry them together.
And that, this is where I think it's so beautiful in listening to Dave talk about it, is sometimes he will look at folks and say, you don't have a spending problem, you have an income problem.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they are doing all the right things with spending, but they've never thought about the fact their income isn't enough to cover the lifestyle that they need to cover. And that's not, I'm going on lavish vacations, or I'm having a mani pedi every week, or anything like this. They need to really focus on, it's interesting, it comes back to self-worth. Maybe I do need to think about leaving this job and getting a better job. So I think that's a big thing for women is, hey, you are capable not of working harder or doing more, but saying, hey, I'm worth more, and I'm going to go take that job that's $5-10 more an hour. Or I'm going to make sure that, I have family support so I can be at work and earn what I need to earn. So have you helped couples look at that income and say, all right, this is your this is your outlay. You seem to be at a good place. Where do you want to earn more?
I've had definitely people in the FPU class that come and say, I can't figure out what's going on until they look at those numbers and go, oh, I don't make enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the question is, okay, what do you want to do about that? Because it might be, well, I love my job. Okay, you'll have to have your expenses go down. But I
Right.
really love XYZ expenses. Well, you can't love both. Right. And that's what that goes back to the mindset, which I do a lot more working with clients of understanding their mindset when they're coming into it. Cause then we have a little more depth that we can dig, right? We can dig a little bit deeper into that. And especially I spent most of my life on the West Coast in the Northwest on the west side of Washington. It's expensive over there. And we moved to Northeast Tennessee and it's cheap here. I mean, comparatively, but so's the income, right? The cost of living might be fantastic, but the minimum wage is almost half of what it is back in Washington. So yeah, so telling people, well, you need to make more money. Well, if there's not a job that makes more money, then what are you going to do? Right. And that's where you start having some real discussions, but the discussions go further than just income expenses, right? It goes into what are you wanting? I had a couple that they had plenty of income, but what they wanted to do, their income was taking away their time from them being able to do what they wanted to do. Well, they decided if they reduce their expenses, then their income could come down and they would have more time to do what they wanted to do. Right. It's not always a cut and dry dollars. It's what do you want? That's where so much of our discussion comes of like, what do you want? Well, we want time to do this activity, but we spent so much time commuting and working. Okay, well, if you had a job closer to home, you'd make less. But if you weren't doing XYZ, you wouldn't need the money. Oh, then we could
Yes.
do the thing we want to do. Exactly.
Right.
You don't need the income that you think you need. So many people think they need a high income because of the debt and because of the activities and all the extras. Well, if you actually looked at your dollars and said, what if we had no debt? How much money do you really, if you had a fully funded emergency fund of 3 to 6 months and you had no debt, we'll talk about the house later. I mean, the house could be another part of the conversation, but how much do you really need every month? All of a sudden, your job options are a little bit different.
Oh, my mind's just popping all over the place. So you've got Tim Ferriss with Lifestyle Design, which is now 10, 15 years old too, of the mini retirements. And what he talks about is if you have no debt, if you have solid funding, then what are you doing that's keeping you from doing what you want to do? Where are you grinding away because you think you need to? Then we're looking at these millennials that are saying, I don't want a 4,000 square foot house with a 2-car garage and a third vehicle and these kind of payments and a membership over here, a membership over there. I want a minivan, and I want to live in it and I want to do this. And so they're saying, I don't want this basic American dream anymore. And then you've got the folks who are looking at this going, huh, what I really want is to spend this amount of time working on, a ministry or working on this. So how do I afford to do that? What am I not going to do over here? But it makes them so happy and joyful. I think that's more what Christ was talking about of where do you want to put your focus and put your life? Because money, as you said earlier, is amoral. It's meaningless all of its own.
Mhm.
So when you're looking at people who are trying to figure out what their wanty is, how do you help them really get in touch with what kind of life they want to live?
That has honestly been different with every client, based on kind of their style and how they're approaching life and what they have already believed they're supposed to want. I used to joke about it, and in the last year, it's kind of become way more realistic, but not always in a positive way. I challenge status quo. I will challenge people's thoughts and think I'm like, well, this is what we're supposed to do. Why? Who told you that? Who told you that that's what you're supposed to do? Who, like, why, what caused you to, like, when did you first believe that? What decisions have you made based on that belief? If that belief wasn't true, what could you do instead?
All great questions. I'll ask those again. This is something that if you're listening, you need to write this down. Ask those again.
I would, well, I guess it gets different every time I ask it too. I want to ask your status quo, define your status quo. And some people don't recognize it. I have a couple before I'm still working on, okay, I see it, but they don't. I'm getting there. But asking yourself, what do I believe? Why do I believe that? And either is, what do I believe I'm deserving? What do I believe I can get in life? Because some people think, well, this is all I get. Who told you that? I'd ask, who told you that? When did you start believing that? What actions or what decisions have you built on that belief? Because the idea of your thoughts inform your beliefs inform your actions inform your results design your lifestyle, right? So it goes back to, what was the thought you had? Who said that? Maybe it was what was modeled for you, that, well, this is all we get. This is all you need to ask for. Like, I did some work with a nonprofit here in our area, and she was saying that she was a substitute teacher in some of the city schools, and she saw these kids that were in like project houses, and she's like, hey, so and so. She goes, hi, my daddy remembers you. This little girl is in the same project housing that her dad was in when this gal was the substitute teacher for him. Right? When you get the idea that this is all we get, this is all we need to work for. Now, that doesn't mean low income. That even means middle class, middle income. It even means higher income, like the couple I mentioned, where they thought they had to have these high earning jobs, until I asked them, what do they really want? Well, we really want this thing over here. Okay, do you really want, and then you start weighing, but they had never questioned the high paying jobs, the work, work your life away till you're 60 and then wish you had your life back kind of thing. They never questioned that. And so I challenged it, and they didn't like it because, he's doing what his dad did. Right. And so, okay, are you doing what you're told? Are you doing what you really wanted to do? Which, we get asked, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Right.
But we don't get to ask it again at 30 and again at 35 and again at 40 and have the freedom to change our mind, because maybe it's not right anymore.
Unless you're a little rebellious and you're freelancing, then you ask this question about monthly. You're like, okay, what am I going to do to entertain myself today? These are fabulous questions. This is beyond the experience that I had with my Dave Ramsey coach. This was, we did the functional part. We didn't really do the why part. So this is why you need to work with Coach Tara, for one, and why this is not really about the numbers. The numbers just tell the story.
I say that a lot. I give them, when I first meet with clients, I give them like a snapshot sheet that, give me your basic numbers, but I say, this is not what we're going to talk about. Like, the numbers are helpful. The numbers are usually what bring people to me, but that's not what that's not usually what we'll spend our time talking about. So people think budget is an awful, it's a B word, right? So I'll say, okay, how about a spending plan? Where do you want your dollars to go? But then it's, where do you want your dollars to go? We have to go back to the wants. What do you want? What do you need? Yes, but that's a different vocabulary. When you have need, it becomes critical, and you take away all the decision. If I need to eat right now, I don't care what it is, give me food. But if I want to eat right now, I'm going to go peruse my pantry. It's a totally different perspective of want and need. And so we go into that too, of, okay, what are your needs? But really, what do you want? Because sometimes those wants are way overriding the needs.
Well, and there is fact versus impact. So, and I may have shared this with you. We were having a really hard time finding a family job for our oldest teenager he was coming on 16. And I had taught them grocery shopping all the way through them. Because, your kids go to the grocery store with you. We might as well teach them, okay, this is what a unit is. These are the prices. These are the reasons why there are some name brand things we buy because we want them and to us they taste better, but there are other things that we buy at this level. So the other thing, if you have teenagers in the house, you know this, there's nothing to eat. Well, most American pantries have 3 to 6 months worth of food stuffed in them if we had to eat, right? If we had to eat, not always what we want. So what happened was double-edged, was when he got his driver's license, we live 20 miles or so from the grocery store. It takes me a couple hours to go and do that. That became his chore, one, because he was willing to do it. Two, it solved the problem of there's nothing in the house to eat, because he bought it, so he knew exactly what was in there. So if you know your numbers, you know what's in there, and you can begin to solve problems. The other thing it solved, besides my time, so I could go and do other things with my time, was because I'm the parent and he's the child, he was required to buy what was on the list. He couldn't go, oh, that's on sale, or oh, I like this, or I think I'll this. He came in budget every single time because he had accountability.
That's where a lot of people use grocery order services, is because they can determine their budget right there at their computer, and they're not getting whatever is impulsive.
And they set us up for impulsive in the grocery store. I mean,
Yes,
let's
they
be
do.
realistic. Those end caps and all this, and if you buy a fifth one, then you get this kind of discount, all those types of things. So let's talk about accountability. What does that look like? Whether it's just you doing it or whether you're doing it with someone else, what does that look like?
I always go to defining the term. You're taking account of something, and that term quite often will have a negative content to it, not context to it, because like, ooh, I'm gonna get in trouble, right? So if I'm someone's accountability partner for singles, or people who are doing their money on their own, I'm not their judge and jury. I'm just asking them, is that where you wanted to spend your money? Right? It's okay. This is, we look at your budget. Where does this go? How we were talking about the crayons in the box earlier. Sometimes the crayons can go in a different box. They don't have to go in that one box. And so I had one gal that she came and she was just so flustered because I'm so over budget. I don't have any money and blah, blah, blah. Well, we looked at it, and it was because she overspent in one category. She had plenty of money in the account, but there were certain categories where she had way overspent, and she just felt like she could spend no money. I was like, wait, hold on. But okay, what else? It's kind of a rob Peter to pay Paul, but being able to go, okay, on this particular day, you were at medical visits, you had to eat lunch out. Yes, it's dining out, but could it have been a medical expense? Right. So in that moment, it was, let's take the judgment out of it. Right. And let's just go, okay, well, where else? The money's been spent. It's done. You can't go back and say, hey, can you give me my $20 back from that meal? So, okay, now you have to make a decision. Okay, I overspent in dining out. You know what? I'm not going to be spending in entertainment this week or this month. I'm going to have to just take it from there and say that was my entertainment last week, and just be realistic with where the money's coming. Now, if that makes the whole account in zero, then we have a different discussion.
Sure.
But the accountability is, I have a plan for my dollars. And I love this analogy that if we had backyard work to have to get done, and I hired a bunch of teenagers to come over and needed them to do the labor for me. Well, if they show up at 9, but I don't give anybody jobs till 10, I could guarantee you no one's going to be around. They're going to go wander off and find something else to do. But the moment, if I'm there at 8:45 and I'm greeting them as they come out of their cars, and I say, you go over there and do this one. I have a job for you over here. Tell me when you're done. You come over here and do this thing. And I'm there and I'm accountable, making sure they're doing all their jobs. They're not going to go wander off. So I say the same thing with money. Have a plan for when it comes in. You know exactly what that dollar is going to do. What job is it going to do? And then you watch to see what happens. And so as an accountability partner, if whatever they want to have that be called, is we look at what jobs got done in that backyard. Hey, this job over here, that money, you spent more in this category. Are you okay with that? What was the reason, right? Sometimes they'll want to reason it out. They don't have to explain it to me. It's their money. It's not my job, but it's them giving an opportunity to verbalize to themselves. They hear the words, Oh, I did this. I didn't have a plan for dinner, so we went out again. Okay. Are you okay with that? Or do you want to change that behavior? Well, I kind of want to change that. Okay. What would that look like? What does that look like for you? Or tell me about what happened that night that you ate out and didn't get home to have dinner that was in the crock pot. Like you made the plan. Oh, well, this and this and this happened. Okay. How could we look at that in the future? Because you'll have another night like that. Right. So the accountability is not a judgment thing at all. It's going, okay, let's look at it. Let's look at what it is, or it's yay, congratulations. Right. I had one couple where after about 3 months of them just getting on the phone saying, guess what we did? Right. They were just so happy to tell me the accountability part of look what we did. And we had to replace our windshield and we did it in cash. And look what we did. And we did it. And it becomes so much fun to be able to say, I'm doing it because you're telling someone that you're doing it. You're not just sitting there on your own going, yay, me. It's a
Oh, I
different
like
thing when someone
babies.
else can verbally pat you on the back.
Yeah, so that's the accountability piece, which you can find. I mean, you can find a professional to do it. You could find a trusted friend to do it. Your partner, sometimes that works to have your partner do it. Those types of things. And when you're talking about the teenagers, I can see it. Yeah, by 10 o'clock they would have all wandered off, which is what it feels like. I'm going to bring us back to the very beginning when you said, "What is your vehicle? How do you make payments?" And understanding your vehicle allows you to know what job and how you're going to give that job. Maybe it's I have a bank where every time a transaction goes out off of my debit card, I can label where it went. I can tag it and say, okay, it went here, it went there. And then at the end of the month, like you said, I can course correct.
Mhm.
What I'm looking at is the rebellious teenager in all of us and the shame bucket. How do you help people out of the shame bucket? Like the young woman who said, I don't have any money. I mean, suddenly we just want to shut down, climb in our shame bucket, put our thumb in our mouth, pull the blanket over our head and say, we can't do it. So how do you
Mhm.
help people out of their shame bucket?
Probably the first thing is saying it's already done. Let's just draw a line. It's done. The money's been spent. Okay. Now let's just clean it up. Right? Like a little kid, if they spill their milk. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you spilled the milk. No, you say, oh, let's get a towel. Moving on. Like I had heard a number of people talk about falling forward, right?
Mhm.
And you do that with music too. Instead of going back to get the note that you lost, just play the next note. And so we do that. We play the next note. Okay, how will that impact next month, next week? Okay, can we get the slack from somewhere else currently, or are we going to need to make a recovery plan? Because if the spending was really out of out of the plan, then we may need a couple weeks or a couple months to make up for that. And that's where the emergency funds come in of, okay, then we're going to take the emergency fund and you're going to not spend in this area and pay back your emergency fund, right? You pay yourself back. You're the banker, essentially. I think a big part of it is just reminding there's no judgment. It's been done. How I think it depends on the situation, but I think a big part of it is identifying what happened, not in a looking back to rehash it, but okay, let's understand what happened so that we can understand how to identify it in the future. Or maybe we need to create a category in the spending plan that allows for some flexibility in that particular category. Then there's less shame there.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've been coming into, then the verse is escaping me right now, is we're no longer condemned, but we can be convicted. So convicted that that behavior might not have suited us, that behavior might not have been in line with our whole goal system of where we're going, might not have been in line of the things we wanted that day. Like you said, sometimes things can't be helped. If you're
Mhm.
out in a medical appointment, you can't get home, or we're out somewhere at a game, and the best we can do is get everybody some food. So the car ride home is not people complaining and crabbing at each other. There are relationship saving reasons to spend a little extra money here and there.
And then like in
Now,
that situation, you don't have to go to a 5-star restaurant, right? The
yes,
goal in that moment is get people fed.
yeah.
You
You can pick
need
up
food.
chicken at the grocery store,
Yes.
with some fruit cups and you got it, done.
Yes.
So that's a piece of the shame piece. What about the rebellious teenager who says, she's in all of us, who says, well, I don't want to do it that way, and I've earned the darn money, and I have the right to spend it the way I want to spend it, and blah, 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 blah. How do you speak to that? And I bet you have a great line. That more confrontational person who doesn't slink back under the rock, but says, I'm going to spend it the way I see fit.
Then I go back to the what do you want? At that point, we've identified, then what do you want? Okay, so do you want that more than this? I mean, an example, not budget related, but I have a kid that wants to become a poetry professor. And when she's not doing her homework, I'll say, is that helping you become a poetry professor? Off to homework she goes, because I know she wants to become a poetry professor. Like that's her want, right?
Right.
She will move heaven and earth to become that. Okay, but then it's so easy to get caught up in the, but I want over here versus no, this is what I truly want. And so if the rebellious teenager comes up and says, well, I deserve blah, 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 and they already did it, and they come back and we have a meeting and we're looking at the budget and like, okay, where's it going to come from? If you're going to put your hands on your hips and you say, I get to spend whatever I want, okay, where's it going to come from? Well, it can come from wherever. All right, that means that you no longer get to spend in these categories. But it goes back to what did you want? And in that moment, what did you want? And sometimes it's going, reminding them what they want, reminding them of the dream, reminding them of the feeling that they wanted. Like that couple I mentioned, like they could describe to me almost how it tasted, this dream that they had of someday. Well, they're not retired. They're still working and they're living there someday. And they can say it tastes so good to be doing what they want without having to wait till they're 60 or 70, right? And so it's getting to that point in my relationship with people of saying, describe for me in vivid detail, and we have whole sessions about that, of what it looks like to have what you want. Because in that moment, the teenager doesn't care about that because they're willing to give the instant gratification away. They want the instant gratification over truly what they want. And Dave Ramsey has a line where he says, children do what feels right, adults devise a plan and follow it.
And if you're living with a loved one who is suffering from addiction, dealing with some kind of addiction, the instant gratification is pervasive.
Yes.
So for you to come back into yourself and talk, I talk about with some of my clients of talking to that teenager, just like you did with yours, and saying, I hear you. It would be really nice to spend that money on a new pair of shoes or going for a fancy dinner. When we get to the point that we want to do this, go on this longer 3-day trip, or be there with our girlfriends and have the same kind of money to go out with them that they have, how are you going to feel about that? Is that where you want to spend it? Sometimes, quite honestly, the dog ate my favorite pair of Uggs yesterday. These Uggs are probably 20 years old. I had to get on Poshmark and find them and do some research on them, which was possibly a waste of my time. But quite honestly, Coach Tara, I plan to be buried in these shoes. I love them. So to me, that was valuable enough to spend the money that I might not have otherwise spent, but they were my go-to short boots in the winter. This is the second pair of Uggs he's eaten, so probably I need a new dog. But that was worth doing it because I knew that I really liked them. I knew they went with almost all the clothes I had. I knew that in Colorado, that was something that I wanted, and that $120, a $200 pair of Uggs was just not in the budget. So I was going to go and get the ones that I knew I already wanted. And the teenager and I were in conjunction with that. There wasn't a rebellion about it. But like you said, I had to get real clear on what it was I want. I moped around and did all the teenage things first, and then went and did it. And that's where I think an accountability could come in really well. Writing it out, picking up your journal and writing it out and going, okay, what is it that I really want, and what am I willing to trade for that? How do you talk to people about God's abundance and God's provision and bringing that into their finances?
That's so good. I think a lot of times it comes down to them even just recognizing gratitude, practicing gratitude. I mean, we hear it everywhere, but when people really do start practicing gratitude and getting to know the heart of God, he's not stingy. He will
Not in
teach
any
us
way.
lessons in seasons that might be a little more lean. But then even in those ones, there's so much blessing and abundance in those, right? So it's not always a financial thing. That's another tricky one that I think comes down to mindset, right? Is somebody just wanting abundance for the sake of being rich? Okay, define rich for me, right? Like, and their mentality of what does it mean to be wealthy? Okay, it's a car and it's a this or it's that. Or someone might say to have time to spend with my loved ones, right? Because then we go back into the, okay, what do you want? Well, if you want the abundance and asking the Lord for the desires of your heart, I hear it go back and forth. That verse that the Lord gives you the desires of your heart is that you desired it and he granted it, or he placed the desire in you.
Mm-hmm.
And now you desire it and he wants to help you go after that desire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? It can kind of go, I've looked into it different ways. I kind of hear it both ways. But being able to allow God to bless you, and I've seen it time and time again, as you said before, it's like, he is so faithful at truly trusting and, getting your heart right, getting your finances right before the Lord. He will bless it. He even says, test me and try me when it comes to money. Put me to the test. I will show you. And I have seen it with my clients over and over in my own life. It's ridiculous the times when I'm like, I'm just going to set this money aside as my tithe money. Maybe I was given a gift at Christmas time and I was like, I don't have to tithe on a gift, Lord. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll put this little money aside. I hadn't even given it yet, but something in my heart, I knew that I wanted to honor God with that little bit of a gift. I got another gift the next day. And I was like, okay, I know he is not a genie. He's not a push a button vendor God. Right. He truly looks at the heart. And when hearts get right and money gets right, blessings always come. It's not a formula. It's not an equation. It's just God math. It just is. And I think you have to just, people that aren't willing to test it, aren't willing to receive it.
We need to do a whole episode on stories around God math. Maybe we bring some friends in, because I have seen some crazy God math, and it's like there's no way that could have happened in the natural, and somehow it still happened. We are asked to be good stewards, and we are asked to trust. And I think the things go hand in hand. So Coach Tara, tell us how people can work with you, how they can find you. How do you do your practice?
I work one-on-one with people. I'll do Financial Peace University online. That's something I need to get my next class up and going. But I work with couples, I work with individuals, and they can find me at tarabalcom.com.
Okay.
Sorry, my last name is Balcom. That's kind of hard. And Tara, Tara. There's different ways to spell both of them. There's no extra L or extra B in the last name, so it's very, very simple.
We'll drop that in the show notes. So if you're if you're just listening to it, fantastic. If you're on YouTube, you'll have all the show notes there. Make sure that you hit Tara up with your questions, join her for Financial Peace University. And as I said in the very beginning, it took us a couple run-throughs and then some coaching and some other things. It's really nice to be able to say, oh, that windshield just broke. We chose not to have collision on it because it's a 1991 Subaru, and we'll just pay for that out of pocket because we've got that set aside in our emergency fund. So if that's something that you want and you want to know why you are choosing to do the things you're doing, you're going to get so much from Coach Tara as she works with you on finances with no judgment. So thanks, Tara, for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King, a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope, or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.